They say time heals all wounds. That's a lie. Time just teaches you how to limp along with them so no one notices the blood. December 1944, Warsaw. I was 26 years old, leading a medical unit under enemy fire. I found a German soldier propped up against a ruined wall, his face destroyed, barely breathing, his eyes pleading. He whispered, "Please, help me," in broken English, and I had a stretcher. One. My men were wounded, and I made my choice. I turned my back. I closed my ears to the screams, and I never looked back. 32 years later, my house caught fire. My son was trapped inside, and I froze, exactly as I had frozen that night in Warsaw. An elderly German neighbor, someone I barely knew, ran into the flames. He saved Benjamin. He did what I couldn't. In the hospital, when I thanked that man, the one with deep scars covering half his face, he gripped my hand with unexpected strength. And his eyes, God, I recognized those eyes. Blue as ice. The same eyes that had looked at me through the snow 3 decades earlier. "Warsaw," he whispered. "You left me. The past wasn't dead. It was living 3 doors down. Before I tell you what happened next, make sure you're subscribed, because this story will make you question everything you think you know about guilt, forgiveness, and whether any of us really deserves a second chance. Watch until the end, and then tell me, could you look the man you abandoned in the eye? Or better yet, could you live with the man you had become after that choice? There are choices that define us, and there are choices that destroy us. Mine did both. I was 26 that night in December 1944, but I look back now and see a boy in a sergeant's uniform, pretending to understand what it meant to lead men in a war that made no sense to anyone. Warsaw was dying around us. Not the quick death of a gunshot, but the slow death of a city being taken apart brick by brick, soul by soul. The cold was a living thing that night. Not just cold, it was a creature that bit at the flesh, that turned sweat to ice on the skin, that made fingers forget how to hold a rifle. The snow was falling heavy, muffling the sounds, but not enough to hide the screams. Never enough to hide the screams. We were in retreat. We didn't call it that, of course. We said tactical repositioning, or some other military lie that let us look each other in the eye. But we all knew the truth. We were running, and men were dying as they ran. I was leading a makeshift medical unit. 12 men, 3 stretchers, medical supplies that could fit in a backpack. Our job was impossible. Save who we could while the world exploded around us. The mortars fell with a hypnotic regularity, a sharp whistle, a second of silence where your heart stopped, then the explosion that swallowed everything. It was between 2 explosions that I found him. He was propped up against what was left of a wall, half buried in the snow. German uniform. He couldn't have been more than 20. His face. God, his face. Shrapnel had turned the left side into a mass of exposed flesh and bone. But his eyes were intact, blue as ice, looking at me with something between hope and terror. He tried to speak. Blood bubbled between his lips. Then, in broken English, accented but perfectly clear, he whispered, "Please, help me." 2 of my men were behind me, bleeding from shrapnel wounds. Patterson had a piece of metal lodged in his thigh. Miller was coughing up blood, probably a punctured lung. We had 1 available stretcher. 1. The math of war is cruel and simple. I knelt beside him. I could see, even in the darkness punctuated only by the light of distant fires, that he was badly wounded. Salvable, maybe, with immediate care and luck. But he was wearing the wrong uniform. And I had men, my men, who needed that stretcher. His eyes pleaded with me, not with words, but with that universal language of desperation that transcends uniforms and flags. He was too young to die there, alone, in the snow of a country that wasn't his. "Sergeant!" Cooper's voice cut through my hesitation. "We need to move now!" I looked at the German soldier. I looked at Patterson. I looked at Miller. I made the decision in 3 seconds. I stood up. I turned my back. "Let's go," I ordered. my voice sounding strangely calm. "Sarge, the German, leave him," I cut in. "We don't have room." We put Patterson on the stretcher. We started moving through the ruins, our boots crunching in the fresh snow, leaving footprints that would soon be filled by more snow, as if we had never been there. Behind us, he screamed. It wasn't a scream of anger or hatred. It was a scream of understanding, the sound of someone realizing they're going to die alone, abandoned by another human being who looked them in the eye and chose to turn away. It was a sound that carried all languages, all wars, all the small and large betrayals of human history. "Please, please." I closed my ears. Not literally. There was no way to do that. But there's a place inside your mind where you can lock things away, where you can push sounds and images and memories and pretend they don't exist. I found that place that night. I pushed the screams in there and kept walking. I never looked back. We saved Patterson and Miller. We made it to the retreat lines, evacuated to the rear. In the report, I wrote that we found 2 wounded and rescued them under enemy fire. I received a commendation for it. But that face followed me home. It crossed the Atlantic with me in 1945. It moved into the suburbs when I bought my first house. It sat at the dinner table with my family. It lay down next to me every night for 32 years. That night in Warsaw ended, but its shadow crossed an ocean and built an invisible prison around me. And I didn't even know the worst was yet to come. America welcomed me as a hero in 1945. Parades, handshakes, grateful looks. Every thank you for your service was a knife. But I quickly learned to smile, nod, and keep the truth in a locked safe inside my chest. The war had taught me many things: survival, leadership, and how to lie while looking someone in the eye. I bought a house in Connecticut in 1947. White, picket fence, a green lawn where nothing had died. Everything Warsaw was not. I got a job in an accounting office. Numbers don't ask questions, they don't bleed, they don't look at you with pleading blue eyes. I married Margaret in 1948. She had a smile that made the world seem clean again. For 3 years, it almost worked. Margaret got pregnant in 1951. When she told me, something inside me grabbed onto that news like a drowning man grabs anything that floats. A son, a second chance, a way to make up for something. I couldn't articulate what, not even to myself. Benjamin was born on a sun-filled April day. I held that tiny body, felt the ridiculously light weight of him in my arms, and silently promised that I would be different, that he would make me different, as if goodness could be inherited, as if love could erase. I became the perfect father. Baseball games on Saturdays, bedtime stories, endless patience for endless questions. "Dad, why is the sky blue?" "Because I need you to see me as someone who knows the answers, son. Because if you see me as I really am, you'll turn your back just like I did." The community respected me. "Thomas Brenner, the veteran," they'd say, with that reverent tone reserved for those who faced evil and came back whole. I'd nod, humbly, and change the subject. I never talked about the war. People took it as modesty, maybe legitimate trauma. It was simpler than the truth. I wasn't who they thought I was. But the nights didn't lie. Every night, he came. The German soldier. Sometimes he was exactly as I'd left him, half buried in the snow, blood freezing on his shattered face. Other times he was standing, unharmed, just looking at me in silence. The worst nightmares were the ones where he spoke. Not in accusation, but in understanding. "I understand, Thomas. You had to choose." And I'd wake up screaming, because unasked for forgiveness was heavier than hatred. Margaret would wake me, her hands gentle on my shoulder. "Another nightmare?" "Just the war," I'd say. Technically true. The perfect lie. "Want to talk about it?" "There's nothing to talk about." She stopped asking eventually. People always do. The years piled up like bricks in a wall. 1950 became 1960. Benjamin grew, 7 years old, 10, 12. Each of his birthdays was a milestone. One more year since Warsaw. One more year I'd managed to pretend I was normal. Lying became my second language. more fluent than English. I could almost believe it. There were moments, Benjamin laughing in the yard, Margaret humming in the kitchen, the smell of coffee on a Sunday morning, where I'd think, maybe I've paid, maybe enough good years can balance one bad night. The human mind is surprisingly creative when it wants to forgive itself. But then came the early hours. 3 a.m., that hour when pretenses die and truths bleed. I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, whispering excuses to the emptiness. I had no choice. My men. I had to save my men. Justifications are like bandages on a gangrenous wound. They cover, but they don't heal. The community elected me to the church board in 1968. Me, who hadn't prayed since Warsaw, sitting in meetings discussing morality and faith. The irony was so thick, it almost had physical weight. But I accepted. Because good men serve on church boards. And I needed to be seen as a good man, since I could no longer feel like one. There was a photograph in our living room, me in uniform, young, my eyes full of something that might have been innocence. Visitors would comment, "You look so brave in that picture." I'd smile. I wouldn't say that courage and cowardice sometimes wear the same uniform. 1970 arrived, 26 years since Warsaw. A number that should have meant distance, but scars don't respect calendars. Benjamin was 19, studying engineering, looking at his father with an admiration that cut me deeper than any accusation could. He didn't know heroes can be built on lies. Margaret and I had a good life. Not perfect, what marriage is, but solid. She never knew about the sleeping pills I started taking in 1965. Never knew about the nights I'd sit in the car in the garage, engine off, just sitting in the dark trying to remember how to breathe. Some burdens you carry alone. I was sure I'd take this secret to the grave. I had built a fortress around it, layer upon layer of normalcy and respectability. Time heals all wounds, they say. A lie. Time just teaches you how to limp with them. Until the night the flames came. The past I had buried so deep was about to emerge in the most impossible way, dressed as a hero. But first, it needed to show me exactly who I had always been. The smell woke me. Smoke, not the gentle smoke of a fireplace, but that acrid, poisonous smoke that scratches your throat and burns your eyes before you even open them. For a confused second, still caught between sleep and consciousness, I thought I was back in Warsaw. Then Margaret screamed, "Thomas, fire!" Reality hit me like a fist. I jumped out of bed. Thick smoke was already filling the upstairs hallway, curling along the ceiling like something alive. Through it, I could see the orange glow coming from the staircase. The heat was intense, pulsing, growing with every second. "Benjamin!" Margaret was screaming. "Benjamin's in his room!" We ran into the hall. Margaret managed to get out our bedroom window onto the garage roof. I pushed her. She resisted, but survival instinct took over. "I'll get Benjamin," I yelled, an easy word to say. I stood at the entrance to the hallway, looking toward the stairs. The flames were climbing the steps like soldiers scaling a trench. The wood crackled, screamed, surrendered. The heat created waves in the air that distorted everything. And at the end of that hallway of fire was my son's room. I took one step forward. My body locked up. It wasn't a conscious decision. It was something more primitive, more visceral. Every muscle, every nerve, every survival instinct screamed the same word. No. My feet were cemented to the floor. My hands were shaking. My breath came in shallow, useless gasps. I knew this fear. I had felt it before. Warsaw, the snow, the screams, the choice. No, I whispered to myself. Not now. Please, not now. But the body doesn't negotiate. The body remembers. And my body remembered that I was a coward. I heard Benjamin cough from the other side of the flames. A faint sound, muffled by the smoke. My 12-year-old son, probably waking up confused, not understanding why the air was burning his lungs, why his father wasn't there. "I'm going," I said aloud. A command, an order. "I'm going." I didn't go. My feet didn't move. It was as if Warsaw had followed me across 3 decades and finally gotten me by the throat. The German soldier was there in the smoke, looking at me. always looking at me. I don't know how long I stood there. Seconds that felt like years. The fire grew, spread, consumed, and I was frozen, useless, exactly as I always knew I was. Then someone pushed past me. Not hard, but with purpose. A figure ran through the front door. An older man, gray-haired, thin body but surprisingly agile. I vaguely recognized him as the German neighbor from 3 houses down, Hoffmann, Klaus Hoffmann. We exchanged polite nods, nothing more. He didn't stop to talk. He didn't waste time with questions or plans. He just covered his face with the wet shirt he was carrying and plunged into the flames. I watched. I stood there, in the entryway, hands empty, while a 70-year-old man did what I couldn't. The stairs groaned under his weight. Parts of the ceiling began to fall. The smoke was so thick he disappeared into it completely, swallowed. Margaret was screaming outside. Neighbors were starting to gather on the street, silhouettes against the flames, sirens in the distance too far. And I, the father, the war veteran, the respected man of the community, was paralyzed. There was a terrible crash, part of the staircase giving way. My heart stopped. I thought, I've killed them both. My son and a stranger who had more courage in 30 seconds than I've had in my entire life. Then I saw movement in the smoke. Klaus emerged like a ghost taking form. He was carrying Benjamin in his arms, my son, unconscious, his face covered in soot, but breathing. Klaus was staggering, each step a battle against his own scorched lungs, against stairs that were crumbling beneath his feet. He reached the door. He passed by me without a look. He carried Benjamin outside into the clean air, onto the grass of the lawn where he laid him down, with a gentleness that contrasted brutally with the chaos. I ran after them. I knelt beside my son. Benjamin coughed, spit out black smoke, opened his eyes, alive, because of another man. Klaus was on his knees a few feet away, bent over, trying to breathe. He was coughing violently. His hands were shaking. I approached him. You saved my son." Pathetic, inadequate words. Klaus lifted his head slowly, and when our eyes met, something in my chest shattered. I recognized those eyes. Not immediately, not consciously, but some ancient, terrified part of my soul recognized them. I had seen those eyes before, in a different set of circumstances, in another kind of fire. Klaus studied me. There was something in his gaze, not accusation exactly, but recognition, as if he knew too, as if he had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. "Your son will be all right," he said, his German accent thick. Then, quieter, almost to himself. This time, someone was saved. The words were strange, too specific to be casual. Klaus laid my son on the grass. The ambulance was arriving, sirens cutting the night like blades. Then he looked at me, with eyes that had already seen hell, and I saw something in them that made me want to run all over again. As the ambulance cut the night with its sirens, I didn't know I was about to walk into a room where the past was waiting for me, alive and scarred. But the truth never waits for you to be ready. It just arrives and tears everything apart. The hospital ward smelled of antiseptic and disguised fear. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, turning everyone into pale versions of themselves. Benjamin was stable, the doctor said. Smoke inhalation, a few scrapes, but alive. Alive because of Klaus Hoffmann. Klaus was sitting in a plastic chair in the corner of the waiting room, hunched over, still coughing occasionally. Someone had given him a hospital blanket that covered his thin shoulders. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a deep exhaustion, the kind that comes from pushing a body past its limits. I approached him on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. "Mr. Hoffmann." My voice sounded strangely formal, distant. He raised his head. In the harsh hospital light, I could see his face clearly for the first time. 70-something, hair completely white, blue eyes that had faded with time but still held something sharp. And the scars. God, the scars. The left side of his face was a map of rebuilt tissue, lines where surgeons had stitched flesh back together, depressions where bone had never healed right, the unmistakable mark of shrapnel, small, jagged stars scattered across his temple and cheek. Something in the back of my mind began to stir, a buried memory trying to dig its way to the surface. "Your son will be fine," Klaus said. His English was good, but heavy with his accent, each word chosen with care. "Thanks to you," I replied automatically. I don't know how to thank you. You saved Benjamin. You risked your life." Empty words, social currency. I sounded like a stranger talking to myself. Klaus didn't answer right away. He just studied me with those faded blue eyes. There was something in them. Not hostility, exactly, but an intensity that made me want to look away, as if he were seeing right through me, through the 3 decades of carefully constructed lies. "It was not the first time I have faced fire," he said quietly. Something in the way he said it, "not the first time," made my skin crawl. "You're very brave," I continued, still stuck in that dance of automatic courtesy. "A hero, really. I don't know what would have happened if you had gone in," Klaus interrupted gently. "It wasn't an accusation. It was an observation. You froze at the door." The words hit me like a slap. My face burned. The fire was too intense. "I was going to, but then you—" "Do not explain," Klaus said. "Fear is something I know well." There was a heavy silence. Margaret was with Benjamin in his room. We were alone in that waiting area, 2 figures under fluorescent lights that revealed too much. Klaus held out his right hand. A simple gesture, a handshake, a thank you for your heroism, go home and sleep well. I took his hand. His fingers closed around mine with unexpected strength, not hostile but firm, like someone holding on to something that might escape. He pulled me slightly closer, his eyes locked on mine. "Warsaw," he said softly. My heart stopped. December 1944. The floor disappeared from under me. You left me. The world imploded. It wasn't just the words. It was the specificity, the certainty, the broken but perfectly clear English. And in that moment, looking at that scarred face, something clicked in my memory like a bone setting. The eyes. I recognized the eyes. Blue as ice. The same eyes that had looked at me through the snow 32 years ago, pleading for help that never came. Older now, faded, but unmistakable. "No," I whispered. The word came out on its own, a primitive denial. "Yes," Klaus replied. There was no triumph in his voice, just weariness. "You remember now." I remembered. God help me, I remembered. The German soldier propped against the ruined wall, the face destroyed by shrapnel, the broken English. "Please, help me." And I had turned my back. You died," I managed to say. "I left you. You had to have died." "Almost," Klaus admitted. "But Polish civilians found me 2 hours later. Half dead, but not dead enough. Sometimes I wonder if it would have been easier to die." My mind was in free fall. Impossible. Impossible. "You're here," I said, stupid with shock. "You've been living 3 houses away from me. For how long?" 20 years. 20 years. 2 decades. We had nodded on the street. He had come to Benjamin's birthday party once. We talked about the weather, about lawns, about nothing. "You knew," I accused. "You recognized me." "For 5 years," Klaus confirmed. "I saw your war photo in your living room during the party. It took a while. You changed. I changed. It was decades. But yes, I knew." "And you never... Why did you never say anything?" Klaus released my hand. He leaned back in the chair, suddenly looking much older than his 70-odd years. "Because I was waiting for the right moment. For the moment when you were ready to see who you really are." His words were knives. "Why did you save Benjamin?" The words came out like an accusation. "Why save the son of the man who left you to die?" Klaus looked at me with something that might have been pity. "Because," he said simply, "I am not you." The truth of it broke me. Right there, in that cold hospital ward, under lights that forgave nothing. I understood. He had had his choice too, to run into the flames or let my son die, and he had chosen differently. I wanted to run, but my legs had turned to stone again. Klaus let go of my hand and stood to leave, but before he left an address scribbled on a napkin. When you are ready for the truth, find me. I wasn't ready. I never would be. But the truth doesn't wait for invitations. It just moves in and starts demolishing everything. We went home 3 days later. The house was destroyed, a partially collapsed roof, blackened walls, the smell of ash embedded in everything. We stayed in a hotel while the insurance processed it all. Benjamin was fine, physically, emotionally. He looked at me differently, as if he had seen something in my face that night, something a child shouldn't see in his father. Margaret kept asking if I was okay, constantly. "You've barely touched your food." "I'm fine." "You didn't sleep at all last night. I heard you pacing." Just stress. The house, the insurance, all of it. Easy lies. The currency I'd been dealing in for decades. But this time, the lies wouldn't stick. They slid off like oil on glass. She knew something was different, radically different. And I couldn't explain it without dismantling 30 years of our life together. The questions consumed me. How did Klaus survive? 2 hours in the Warsaw snow with catastrophic injuries, impossible. But there he was, alive, scarred, real. The math of his survival defied all logic. How was he here, on my street, 3 doors down? 20 years, he'd said. 20 years of impossible proximity. How many times had we waved? How many empty conversations about the weather, about gardening, about absolutely nothing while the weight of Warsaw hung invisibly between us? And the question that was killing me, why did he save Benjamin? I turned these questions over in my mind like rocks in a tumbler. During the breakfast I couldn't swallow. During meetings at work where my boss would ask something and I'd realize I'd been staring into space for 5 minutes. During silent dinners where Margaret and Benjamin would talk, and I was in Warsaw, always in Warsaw. I started digging, quietly, libraries, public records. I didn't know what I was looking for. Evidence? A contradiction? Proof that I was going insane and Klaus was just a kind neighbor with no connection to my past? Klaus Hoffmann arrived in the United States in March 1952. Ellis Island, German war refugee, worked construction, then as a custodian at a school. Never married, no children, lived at 3 different addresses before buying the house on our street in 1956. 1956, 20 years ago. Benjamin was 4, I was 38. Margaret was pregnant for the 2nd time, a miscarriage we never fully recovered from. Klaus arrived that fall, moved into a modest house with a small garden, and began a quiet life 3 doors down from the man who had left him to die. Chance? A statistical fluke in an infinite universe? Or something heavier? Fate? Justice? God? I hadn't believed in God since Warsaw, but I started to consider that maybe God believed in me and had a cruel sense of humor. The nightmares changed. Before it was always Warsaw, the snow, the cold, the screams. Now Klaus was in them. Not the young, broken Klaus that I left behind, the old scarred Klaus, emerging from the flames carrying Benjamin. But in the dreams, when he'd lay my son on the grass and turn to me, he wouldn't say anything. He'd just look, and that look was worse than any accusation. I'd wake up at 3 a.m., sweating, heart racing. Margaret would try to comfort me. I'd pull away. Not out of cruelty, but because her touch made me feel like an imposter. She was touching the Thomas Brenner she thought she knew, not the man who was really in the bed next to her. I lost 15 pounds in 2 weeks. Margaret insisted I see a doctor. I went. He asked about stress, trauma from the fire, PTSD. He prescribed sedatives. I didn't take them. I was afraid that in a dreamless sleep, I might say the truth out loud. Benjamin came home from school one day and found me sitting in the car in the garage, engine off, just sitting. "Dad? Hey, champ. Are you okay?" "Sure, just thinking." "About the fire?" "Something like that." Mr. Hoffman is really nice. He visited me in the hospital, brought me comic books. Klaus had visited my son while where was I? Trying not to fall apart in public restrooms. He is, I agreed. Very nice. He said something weird, Benjamin continued. He said meeting the right people at the right time can change everything, that sometimes it takes our whole lives to understand why. Those words were for me, a message sent through my son. I oscillated between emotional states like a broken pendulum. Denial. Klaus was confused, senile, mistaking me for someone else. Rage. How dare he show up now, ruin the life I'd built. Terror. What did he want? Revenge? Public exposure? The destruction of everything I had? But underneath it all, deeper and darker, was another emotion. Relief. Relief that finally, after 32 years, the secret was out. Someone knew. The invisible prison had a crack in the wall, and light, painful, brutal, but light, was getting in. Margaret cornered me on the 5th night. "Thomas, what is going on? And don't tell me it's just the fire. I've known you for 30 years. Something has changed. Something broke." I looked at her. This woman who had slept beside me, raised my son, built a life on the foundation of my lies. And I almost told her. The words were right there, on the tip of my tongue. But I swallowed them back. Not because they were hard to say, because after them, there would be no going back. Our marriage, our life, everything would be redefined through that one truth. "I just need time," I said. She didn't believe me, but she nodded, because what else could she do? The napkin with the address sat on my desk for 5 days. I'd look at it, between insurance paperwork, between bills, between all the bureaucracy of rebuilding a house. The paper was crumpled, the ink smudged at one corner. A doctor's handwriting, or someone whose hand was shaking. On the 6th day, I woke up at 5 a.m. Margaret was still asleep. Benjamin, too. The temporary house was silent. I grabbed my car keys and the crumpled napkin. As I drove through the familiar streets toward Klaus's house, I realized I wasn't going to an address. I was going to a tribunal. And I was simultaneously the defendant, the jury, and the executioner. I parked in front of his house at 6 in the morning. The sun was just coming up, painting the sky in pinkish hues that seemed obscene for the moment. The house was small, well kept. A tidy lawn, flowers in the window box. The house of a man who had learned to make peace with life. I sat in the car for 20 minutes, hands on the wheel, engine off, just breathing. Then I walked up the 3 front steps and knocked on the door. Klaus opened it almost immediately. He was dressed, simple slacks, a button-down shirt, as if he'd been up for hours, waiting. Maybe he had. His faded blue eyes studied me without surprise. "Thomas," he said simply. "I came," I replied. Stupid words, obvious. "I know." He stepped back, holding the door open. "Come in." The house smelled of coffee and something else. Old books, maybe. Polished wood. It was surprisingly welcoming. Not sparse, not cold. The living room was filled with photographs in modest frames. Klaus at various ages. Places I didn't recognize. People smiling. Friends, presumably. A whole life told in silent pictures. "Coffee," Klaus offered. I shook my head. My stomach was in knots. We sat in old but comfortable armchairs facing each other. A heavy silence. The kind of silence that has physical weight, that presses on your chest. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore. "I need to explain," I began. The words came out in a rushed tumble. "That night, Warsaw. You have to understand the circumstances. I was under fire. I had wounded men. My men. Men I was responsible for. Patterson had shrapnel in his thigh. Miller was coughing up blood. And there was only one stretcher. One. I had to choose." Klaus listened. He didn't interrupt. He just watched me with those eyes that had seen too much. "It was war," I continued, desperate to make him understand. "There were no good choices, just less terrible ones. And you were wearing the wrong uniform. My superiors would have crucified me for saving a German while Americans were dying. I couldn't. Thomas, Klaus said gently. Stop. I stopped, mouth open in the middle of a justification. You do not need to convince me, he continued. I did not come to you asking for explanations. You came to me. He was right. And that somehow made it all worse. How did you survive? The question came out as an accusation, as if his survival was a crime against the natural order. Klaus leaned back in his chair. He looked out the window where the morning sun was coming in at soft angles. Polish civilians, he said simply. A family, a father, 2 sons. They found me 2 hours after you left. I was still conscious, half buried in the snow. They spoke no German, no English, but they saw a human being, dying. He paused, took a sip of coffee. They dragged me to a cellar. Improvised treatment. There was a daughter, no more than 14, who cleaned my face with water that should have been for the family to drink. Rations. Everyone was starving. And still, they fed me. I felt something twist in my chest. Soviet troops came 3 days later. They took me. Prisoner of war camp for 3 years. Siberia, then refugee camps. Finally, permission to emigrate in 1952. He spoke with the tone of someone reciting historical facts. No self-pity, no drama. I lost everything, he continued. Family killed in the bombings, home destroyed, country divided. I came to America with $16 and borrowed clothes. I was 31 years old, and I had to learn how to live all over again. I'm sorry, I whispered. Pathetic words. Why? Klaus asked genuinely. You did not bomb my family. You did not start the war. You just made an impossible choice on an impossible night. I left you to die, but I did not die. By luck. By blind chance. By kindness, Klaus corrected. From strangers who owed an enemy soldier nothing. Perhaps that is what we should remember from the war, not how many left us to die, but how many saved us when they did not have to. Those words were knives wrapped in kindness. Why did you move to this street? I had to ask. When you recognized me, why did you stay? Klaus considered the question carefully. At first, 20 years ago, it was genuine chance. A house was available. The price was right. It was only when I saw your picture years later that I made the connection. And then, he paused. Then I stayed because I needed to understand. Understand what? If you were the monster I had made you into in my dreams, or just a man. Silence. And? I asked, my voice cracking. You were just a man, a husband, a father, a neighbor who waved in the morning, a person who complained about the weather and mowed his lawn on Saturdays. It did not make that night less painful, but it made it less simple. Tears were burning my eyes. 32 years of not crying about Warsaw. 32 years of keeping it all buried. You saved my son, I managed to say. Why? Because he is not you, Klaus answered simply. And because I chose not to be defined by the worst thing that ever happened to me. If I had let Benjamin die for revenge, then you would have won. You would have turned me into you. The truth of it shattered me. Klaus leaned forward. His eyes bored into mine. So let me ask the question that really matters, Thomas. If it were today, if you found that wounded German soldier today, with everything you have lived, with everything you have learned, would you leave me again? I couldn't answer him then, but the question followed me home and forced me to look in the mirror in a way I never had before. And in the days that followed, I went back to Klaus's house. Not once, not twice. I went back because finally, after 32 years, I was ready to listen. Klaus didn't judge me for the repeat visits. He just made coffee, sat in that same armchair, and talked. Not in grand, dramatic declarations, but in honest fragments. Pieces of a puzzle that showed not a monster or a saint, but a man. The pain, he began on the second visit, was not the worst part. He took a sip of coffee. He looked at his hands. Old, scarred hands that had held a lot of pain. Physical pain has a limit. The human body can only take so much before it shuts down. But the feeling of being abandoned, that has no limit. That corrodes you from the inside out. I can still see him there, propped against that ruined wall. The cold, God, the cold. His voice grew distant, lost in December 1944. It wasn't just temperature. It was a living thing, something that bit, that burned even as it froze. I could feel my fingers dying, literally dying, and the blood freezing on my face before it even had a chance to fall. I listened. For the first time in decades, I truly listened. I was conscious for almost 2 hours, Klaus continued. Conscious enough to hear the fighting move away, to understand that I was alone, that no one was coming back. Klaus, He held up a hand gently, not in anger, in request. Let me finish. I need you to understand, not to make me a victim, but so you can understand what came after. I closed my mouth. I let him speak. I thought about my mother, he said, and his voice cracked just slightly. She made apple strudel every Sunday. I thought about how I would never taste it again, about how she would never know what happened to me. Just a letter from the army, missing in action, and she would spend the rest of her life looking out the window, waiting. Silent tears were tracking down his face. He didn't wipe them away. Then I heard voices, Polish, a language I didn't understand, but I recognized the tone, an argument. Someone had found me, and they were deciding what to do with me. Klaus looked at me directly. Imagine, Thomas, a Polish family. They have watched Germans destroy their country, kill their neighbors, and they find a dying German soldier. The easiest thing, the most justified thing, would be to turn their backs. The irony was not lost on me. But they didn't. The man, Pavel, I learned later, said something. His daughter, Anya, 14, translated for me later. He said, "If we become what they are, we have already lost." A heavy silence. They took me to their cellar. They risked their lives. If Germans had found an American soldier in your home, but they risked it. They cleaned my wounds with precious water. They shared food they barely had for themselves. And Anya, she would hold my hand when the pain was too much. Klaus stood, walked to the window. The morning sun lit his scarred profile. The Soviets came. They took me. Pavel tried to intervene, to explain I was wounded, that I needed a hospital. They beat him in front of his family. They dragged me away. 3 years in prisoner of war camps, he described. Not with self-pity, but with the clinical precision of someone who had fully processed the trauma. Hunger that turned you into an animal. Cold that made Warsaw feel like summer. Men dying next to you in the middle of the night. But there were moments, he continued, turning back to me. Small kindnesses. A guard who looked the other way while we shared food. A prisoner who had been a doctor and treated wounds with rags and hope. Humanity in impossible places. On the third visit, he spoke of starting over. I came to America with nothing, literally nothing, not even good memories to keep me warm. Everything had been burned, and I had to decide, become bitter or become better. How do you choose? I asked. How does someone go through all that and choose not to hate? Klaus considered the question carefully. It was not one choice, he admitted. It was 1,000 small choices. Every morning, waking up and deciding not to carry poison. Every encounter with someone, choosing to see Pavel and Anya, not the guards who beat them. Every time the anger came, and it came, Thomas, it came constantly, choosing to release it instead of feed it. And when you recognized me, Klaus sighed. That was 5 years ago, Benjamin's birthday party. You had a photo in your living room. You, in uniform, young. And something clicked. It took weeks to be sure. Faces change, decades pass. But the eyes do not lie. Oh, why not confront me immediately? Because confrontation is not the same as resolution. I could have pounded on your door that night, accused you in front of your family, destroyed your life. It would have been just, perhaps. But would it have healed me? Would it have changed Warsaw? He paused. So I waited. I watched you. I saw how you were with your wife, with Benjamin. I saw that you were just a man. Flawed, haunted, I realized. Something at the edges of your eyes. I recognized it, the weight of secrets carried too long. And the fire? Instinct, Klaus said simply. I saw the flames. I saw you, frozen, and my body moved before my mind could process. It was not a grand moral decision. It was just what needed to be done. Klaus looked out the window and said, "Do you know what I learned, Thomas? That carrying hatred is heavier than any wound." His words opened a door in me that had been locked for 3 decades, and on the other side was a brutal question. Who had I become by never opening that door? The answer required something I had avoided for my entire adult life: total honesty. And honesty, I discovered, hurts more than any bullet. I told Margaret on a Tuesday night. There was no right time to destroy a marriage, but that night felt less wrong than the others. We sat in the hotel's temporary kitchen. Benjamin was asleep. Coffee cooled between us, and I spoke. 32 years of truth poured out in 20 minutes of a halting confession. Warsaw, the German soldier, the choice, the nightmares, Klaus, everything. Margaret said nothing while I spoke. She just looked at me as if she were watching a stranger inhabit her husband's body. When I finished, the silence was so thick it was almost suffocating. 30 years, she finally said. Her voice was flat. Emotionless was worse than anger. 30 years sharing a bed with me, raising a son, building a life, and you never, not once. I was afraid. Of what? Of me. Now there was anger. Were you afraid I'd see you as human? As someone who made a terrible mistake in a war? It wasn't just a mistake, I managed. I left a man to die. But he didn't die, Margaret exploded. He lived, and he saved our son. And you're still sitting here, drowning in guilt as if it's some kind of noble penance. Her words cut me. I'm not angry about what you did in Warsaw, Thomas, she continued, tears finally appearing. I'm angry that you never trusted me enough to tell me, that you built walls so high I've spent 3 decades bumping into them without understanding why. She left the kitchen. She didn't slam the door. It would have been better if she had. Silence was a judgment. Benjamin found out 2 days later. Not from me, Margaret told him. Betrayal layered on betrayal. He found me in the hotel parking lot, just sitting in the car, a recent habit. Is it true? He asked, no preamble. 12 years old, but his eyes were older in that moment. What Mom said about the war, about Mr. Hoffman. Yes, you left him to die. I tried, but he survived. Benjamin processed this. I watched a dozen emotions cross his young face. Confusion, disappointment, an attempt at understanding. He saved my life, Benjamin said finally. I know. And you just stood there watching. The truth of it was brutal. I froze, Ben. I froze because the same cowardice that made me abandon Klaus in Warsaw was still in me. 32 years later, and I hadn't changed at all. Benjamin looked at me for a long time. But you're trying now, he said quietly. Right? Visiting him. Talking. That means something. The words of a child, still believing his parents could be fixed. I sought professional help the next week. Dr. Chen, a specialist in veteran trauma. His office smelled of old books and something that might have been hope. Tell me about Warsaw, he asked in the first session, and I did. But this time, I didn't stop at the facts. He made me dig deeper, not just what happened, but what I felt. The terror, the paralysis, the way my body had decided before my mind that survival came first. Untreated PTSD, Dr. Chen diagnosed. For 3 decades, you never processed the trauma. You just buried it and built a life on top of it. But I functioned, I protested. I had a job, a family, a normal life. Functioning isn't living, he replied gently. It's surviving. And you've been surviving since 1944. The sessions were brutal, making me relive not just Warsaw, but all the small deaths that came after. Every lie to Margaret. Every time I woke up screaming and said I was fine. Every moment I looked at Benjamin and wondered if he could love the real man, not the edited version. But slowly, something began to shift. The conversations with Klaus continued. Weekly now. No longer one-sided confessions, but real dialogues. Improvised philosophy about wartime morality, about how to decide what's right when all the options are wrong. You blame yourself for the choice, Klaus said one morning. But you never stopped to question why you were in that position. Why a 26-year-old man had to decide who lives and who dies. Someone had to decide. Yes, but who decided you should be there? Who created the circumstances where impossible choices became necessary? I began to understand. The war hadn't just asked me to make a terrible decision, it had made that decision inevitable. And to spend 3 decades hating myself for it was, in a way, to accept the war's logic as just. You were not a coward, Klaus said in one particularly hard session. You were traumatized, breaking in real time, and the world asked you to keep functioning as if you were whole. But then he said something that changed everything. We were sitting in silence, coffee cooling, the afternoon sun painting the room gold. Thomas, Klaus began carefully, I need you to understand something. You need to forgive me. Forgive you? Genuine confusion. Klaus, you're the victim. You need to forgive me for surviving, he interrupted, because that is what truly haunts you. The words knocked the air out of me. It is not that you left me to die, he continued. It is that I survived, that I showed up, that the choice you spent 3 decades rationalizing as necessary was proven unnecessary by my simple existence. That sentence inverted everything I thought I understood about guilt, and it led me to the hardest place of all, back to that night in Warsaw, but this time to see it through honest eyes. And I discovered that honest eyes required more than memory. They required presence. Klaus suggested the trip one spring morning in 1977. Come back with me, he said simply, to Warsaw. My first instinct was to refuse, violently. The idea of setting foot in that place again made my chest tighten. Why? I managed to ask. Because you never left, Klaus replied. Your body came back to America in 1945, but part of you is still on that street, on that night. You need to go get that part. Margaret encouraged me to go. Our relationship was slowly rebuilding, brick by honest brick. Go, she said. Finish this. We flew in June. 2 old men crossing the Atlantic, carrying decades between them. Warsaw had changed. Of course it had. 33 years of reconstruction. New buildings where ruins used to be. Paved streets where mud and blood had mixed. But under the veneer of normalcy, I could feel the ghosts. Klaus guided me through the streets with a surprisingly sharp memory. There was a bakery there, he'd say. Bombed in '44, but rebuilt. Same family. Or, that square. They hanged 20 people there. I knew 3 of them. Living history bleeding through the present. It took me 2 days to work up the courage to go to the spot. Klaus didn't push. He just waited. On the morning of the 3rd day, I woke up and said, "Today." He just nodded. We walked in silence. The streets were different but similar enough to make my skin crawl. Every corner felt familiar in a nightmarish way. My heart was pounding. My hands were sweating. "There," Klaus finally said, stopping. It didn't look like anything special. A residential street, children playing, life happening. But I recognized the structure of the buildings, the ones that had still been standing in '44, rebuilt, but fundamentally the same. That wall, Klaus pointed to a brick facade. I was leaning against it. I approached it slowly. I touched the bricks. Cool, solid, real. And something inside me finally broke. I fell to my knees right there on the Warsaw sidewalk, and I wept. 33 years of dammed-up tears, coming out in violent sobs that shook my whole body. Not quiet, dignified tears. Ugly, loud, childish wails. Klaus knelt beside me. He didn't touch me. He didn't say empty words of comfort. He just stayed there, a silent witness to my unraveling. I don't know how long I stayed like that. Locals walked by, some looking with concern. Klaus would say something in Polish, presumably explaining, reassuring. But for me, the world had shrunk to that spot, that moment, that pain finally allowed to exist. When I could finally breathe again, Klaus helped me to my feet. "Thank you," I whispered. "For what?" "For not making me do this alone." In the following days, Klaus took me to places he had known. The cellar where the Polish family had hidden him. It was a laundry now, but Klaus pointed to the exact corner where he had lain. "Anya would sit there," he said. She'd hold my hand and tell me stories I didn't understand, but the sound of her voice kept me alive. We visited memorials, walls covered in names, thousands of them, tens of thousands. Each name a story like ours, impossible choices, broken lives, silences carried. One afternoon we met a Polish veteran in a cafe. White hair, hands shaking slightly as he held his coffee. Klaus greeted him. They spoke in Polish. Then he translated. "He was a partisan, fought in the resistance. He has a story similar to yours." The man looked at me with tired, kind eyes. Through Klaus translating, he told of having to choose between rescuing wounded comrades or completing a mission. He chose the mission. 3 men died waiting for a rescue that never came. "I see their faces every night," he said. 50 years later, but I have learned, war makes all choices wrong. We just choose the least terrible one. Those words. War makes all choices wrong. We just choose the least terrible one. We talked to others. A woman who had hidden Jewish families, but had to turn one away. No room, no food. That family was captured.
A man who had informed on his neighbor to save his own family. Each story a different weight, but all the same essence, humanity broken under impossible pressure. "I am not telling you this to minimize," Klaus said, "but to show you, you are not a unique monster. You are a common man in extraordinary circumstances." On our last night in Warsaw, we sat on a bench in a rebuilt park. A Polish summer, warm air, children laughing in the distance. Life, insisting on continuing, despite everything.
Klaus took something from his pocket. A creased photo, folded and refolded so many times it was nearly falling apart. He unfolded it carefully. A young man, maybe 19, looked out from the photo. An undamaged face, no scars, a genuine smile. Eyes full of something that might have been innocence or hope. "This is me," Klaus said. Before the war, before the wounds, before everything. I studied the photo. I tried to connect that young face to the man beside me. They were the same person, and yet they weren't. "I have carried this for 50 years, Klaus continued, "to remember who I was, who the war stole." He held the photo out to me. "I want you to have it. Klaus, I can't. You can. You must. Because you need to see not who you left to die, but who survived. Not the victim, the person." I took the photo with a trembling hand. "Thank you isn't enough," I managed to say. "It doesn't need to be enough," Klaus replied. "It just needs to be true." When we returned to America, we were no longer strangers connected by trauma. We were 2 men who had chosen to turn pain into something that could heal. And in the years that followed, I discovered that healing is rarely private. It has to be shared to be real. Klaus and I started speaking, first hesitantly, in small veterans groups, old men with eyes that recognized the weight we carried. We didn't speak to glorify war or condemn choices. We spoke to humanize, to show that heroes and monsters are often the same person at different moments. The schools came later. Benjamin suggested it. He was studying psychology now, inspired, he said, by watching 2 men face the impossible and choose truth over silence. We would sit in uncomfortable chairs in front of bored teenagers who would gradually lean forward, captured by the raw honesty. "War is not what you see in the movies," Klaus would say, his German accent still thick after decades. "It is choices where all the options are wrong." And I would add, It's living with those choices afterward, not for years, for your entire life. Margaret started joining the talks, at first just watching, then sharing her perspective, what it's like to love someone carrying secrets, to build a life on an invisible foundation, and to choose to stay when the truth finally comes out. Our family changed. Not overnight. Healing never is. But slowly, honesty replaced performance. Hard conversations instead of polite silences. And we found that vulnerability, as terrifying as it is the only true path to intimacy. I understood something fundamental. Klaus didn't forgive me out of charity. He forgave me because he saw his own broken humanity reflected in mine. By forgiving me, he was forgiving himself for all the times he wasn't perfect, all the choices that haunted his nights. Forgiveness was as liberating for him as it was for me. 1982. Klaus got sick. Cancer, the doctor said, spread too far too late. Months, maybe weeks. I visited him in the hospital almost daily. We'd sit in the comfortable silence that only decades of true friendship can create. Sometimes we'd talk. Other times, we'd just exist together. One autumn afternoon, he was particularly weak. His skin was almost translucent, his breathing labored. But when I walked in, his eyes flashed with a moment's clarity. "Thomas, I'm here, my friend." He held out his hand. I took it. Skin like paper over fragile bones. The same hand that had gripped mine that night in the hospital after the fire 6 years earlier. "I need to tell you something," Klaus whispered. I leaned in closer. "Thank you." "For what?" Genuine confusion. "For letting me save you." Tears burned my eyes. "Klaus." "No," he interrupted gently. "Listen, I carried Warsaw for decades. Not like you, but I carried it. I carried the anger at being left, the fear that my life wasn't valued. And then you showed up. And by accepting my forgiveness, by allowing me to save Benjamin, by letting me turn that terrible night into something redemptive, you gave me a gift greater than survival. You gave me purpose." His breathing grew more labored. "Pain without purpose is just suffering. But pain turned into healing. That is a legacy." Klaus squeezed my hand one last time. He closed his eyes, and he slipped away to somewhere pain couldn't reach. That night, for the first time in 38 years, I slept without nightmares. This is my confession. Not for absolution, but so you will understand. The war never ends when the shooting stops. It only ends when we choose to let it go. And that choice doesn't happen once. It happens every day in 1,000 small moments of courage. I'm 84 years old now. White hair, shaking hands, a body that remembers every winter since 1944. But for the first time, when I look in the mirror, I recognize the man looking back. I'm not a hero, I never was. But I am also not just the worst choice I made on a terrible night in December. I am the sum of it all. The cowardice and the courage, the lies and the truth, the abandonment and the redemption. Klaus taught me that. That to be human is to carry contradictions. And that forgiveness, real forgiveness, doesn't erase the past. It just finally allows us to live in the present. So, I ask you, whoever is listening, are you carrying something you've never told? Some choice, some moment, some truth that builds walls around you? I can tell you, those walls are never protecting you. They are only caging you. And the key is closer than you think. Sometimes, it lives 3 doors down. If this story touched you, if it resonated in some way, leave a like. Share it with someone who needs to hear that forgiveness, of others and of yourself, is still possible. Subscribe, because there are more stories to tell. Stories that need to be told. Because in the end, all we have are our stories, and the courage to tell them truthfully.